we interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Show, starring Courage, the Cowardly Dog!
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark. In honor of tonight's episode, I am leaving my blackout curtains open so I can watch this storm blow in. I think it might rain.
It's coming. It's coming.
I can't tell.
Certainly
it looks really
windy.
spooky.
There are
out there.
pine cones hitting my roof constantly and making me and both of my cats jump out of our skin.
So yeah, you might hear some fun sound effects. Perfect for this evening. The impending doom. But also,
the impending doom.
I'm drinking out of my spooky, scary skeletons glass.
Yes, as you should. You guys have seen this because we posted it. It was one of our Christmas gifts.
I'm sipping some brandy.
We exchanged.
Because brandy feels like it's that old horror era of time.
It does.
Like Dracula, mummies.
King Tut.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. If you get scared and you get all pale from fright.
That's true.
People typically give them a glass of brandy and say this will bring some color back into your cheeks.
See, I feel like it would do the opposite for me, but
it depends on the person, I'm sure. It wasn't the healthiest of things to do. But before we get into all that, I wanted to talk about something from last week. So while I was editing the Duck Brothers, I wanted to confirm something in my head that I said. And so I looked up the Manchurian Candidate just to make sure I didn't sound like a total idiot.
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
We have to double check our references.
And I found a really fun detail because I didn't have time to watch the movie before recording. I discovered that the main character, who's the brainwash victim, he's having these reoccurring nightmares where he's surrounded by this group of little old ladies.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember this, but it has been.
And they're the ones
forever.
Manipulating the reality or whatever.
Whoa.
I'm not really sure, but it reminded me of Muriel in that episode, which may be why they let a sweet little old lady enter the military compound.
Maybe that was the reference.
Maybe that was kind of a reference.
Honestly, I feel like we sometimes think too hard when it comes to courage. Not that they weren't thinking hard, but just that the most obvious references that are right under our noses somehow still also go right over our heads.
Sometimes. Wow. What a paradox.
What a paradox and what a mummy we're about to talk about today.
Whoa, that was so good. You're showing up. I hope I can show up.
Oh, Jesus.
Paradox Kaylin Andrews.
My name is Kaylin, if you don't know me.
That's right. And my name is Christian.
And this is That's Pretty Dark.
Totally is.
And today,
Pretty dark.
I have the distinct honor and pleasure of bringing you all
I'm jealous.
one of the biggest Courage the Cowardly Dog episodes to date, frankly.
I'm jealous.
It is clearly monumental in many a millennial nightmare. But much like our last Courage adventure, the air dates of this episode are all over the place. So I have no idea when it actually aired.
I'm not surprised at all.
Season 1, Episode 7, King Ramses' Curse / The Clutching Foot, was produced, at least, definitely, in 1999.
Yeah.
And it aired on either January 21st, 2000, or January 7th, 2000.
Oh, wow.
So
weird.
It was the second episode of the new millennium, if we said that episode 6 was the first.
Yeah, well, if either of these could be correct, then it's either the second or the first of the new millennium.
See, that's what I'm not sure about. So
who knows?
It would make a lot of sense if this was the first episode of the new millennium because it is such a hard-hitting, looms large in our mind episode. But who's to say?
Has that impending doom, cursed quality?
I would say we weren't there.
Either
we
way,
were there, but we don't know when it aired.
Either way, these two pairs of episodes, kind of, if they do somehow sandwich Y2K, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd be okay
on both
with that.
sides.
I would be perfectly okay with that. And it seems that that's what happened to some extent. We know this was the range. We just don't know the exact dates.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that episode 7A, King Ramses' Curse, was directed by John Dilworth and written by Bill Marsili, who wrote 6 other Courage segments, including Freaky Fred, so we've already referenced him before. He also wrote The Queen of the Black Puddle, The Quilt Club, The Windmill Vandals, and Profiles in Courage.
Oh, nice.
And it made me smile to see that he also co-wrote the 2006 film Deja Vu. Do you remember that one?
I do. I don't know if I saw it, but I remember the movie coming out.
I saw it in theaters with my good friend Thomas, that I talk about from time to time. I saw every movie from probably 2006 to 2010.
What happens in that movie?
It's they splinter off reality, and you see different timelines, I think, of
the same event,
or of the same event. Maybe
you
see
did
different
see
perspectives of the same event. That might be what it is.
I did see that movie. Yes.
I quite enjoyed it at the time.
It was fun.
Felt like a badass for liking an action movie as a high school girl.
I think about that movie all the time. I never know what the name is. So there it is.
Deja Vu.
Deja Vu.
We'll have to revisit it. But it came from the same mind that brought us King Ramses' Curse and Freaky Fred.
I'm getting a weird feeling like I've had this conversation before.
So I think before we go any further, it's time for a summary.
Let's do it. Let's hear it.
In King Ramses' Curse, yet another mysterious artifact is discovered on the Bag Farm after having been stolen and abandoned there by two cat-like thieves. Cat burglars, if you will. This item, resembling a stone tablet, carries a dark curse. But of course, this is no deterrent to Eustace, who believes he can make a pretty penny by selling this priceless treasure. Clearly, he learned nothing from whatever time he spent banished inside his brother's money box last episode.
No. Yeah.
Once again, Eustace's greed wreaks havoc on the farmhouse and all of its inhabitants, as they are confronted with not only terrible plagues, but the terrifying CGI mummy of King Ramses himself.
Return the slab.
Yeah. Without further ado, let's return the slab. Let's return the slab, shall we?
I can't even sound that bored. The way this voice comes across is so tired.
Yeah.
And
exhausted
dead
in
and
a way.
empty.
Hollow. Very hollow.
I've been trying to just achieve the depths of that.
It's pretty impressive.
Vocalization, and I can't even do it.
And I mean, we have some details. We'll discuss those details when we meet our mummy friend.
Nice.
In the episode.
Can't wait to shake his hand.
Won't just shake a poor sinner's hand.
Poor mummy's hand.
I got friends on the other side.
Hey.
It's pretty appropriate.
He's on our side tonight, though.
As I said before, this episode kicks off with two apparently Russian feline thieves, cat burglars.
Faster! Drive faster! If they catch us with it, we're done for! What are you doing?
You're right. We got to hide the thing where we can find it later. There, the water pump.
Voiced by Jim Cummings, which is this his first Courage appearance?
Well, he's credited in every episode as contributing voices, but it's never clear who.
Who and what.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of information and potentially misinformation, as we'll talk about soon, out there. But I'm going to assume this is true.
Nice.
And the other cat burglar is voiced by Paul Schofler.
Oh, old Paul Sheffy.
These two are engaged in a high-speed police chase, having stolen an ancient tablet, apparently directly from the tomb of King Ramses. Never mind the fact that they wouldn't be able to drive from Egypt straight to nowhere, because you get the impression they're coming from wherever it was that they retrieved this. I think when I was a kid, I thought that they stole it from like a museum or something, because they are dressed in that very typical like beanie.
Well, that's the impression I get now.
Okay,
because the guy comes and he says like, I'm from the Institute of the Pharaohs or whatever.
The Institute, right.
And it seems like that is a building, that is a whole organization.
So we assume that it's been stolen from this institute.
I think it came from their museum of some kind.
I just don't know.
But then they show it later in the pyramid, don't they?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think it came from the pyramid, but there is a little bit of
who's to say?
Some gray area here.
I think there's just a lot there that we're missing. It seems like there's this massive heist, if you will, to reference the second segment, to get the tablet this far across the world, and this is just the
latest
next
in the relay.
Yeah, the next leg in the
next
relay.
Leg. And that could be true. I have some other qualms with this whole idea,
right,
that we'll get to at the end once the listener has heard the full story and can help us make our judgments. But yeah, it's not immediately clear. We'll just say that much.
Or do all portals / loopholes deliver people in this universe to nowhere by accident?
Which
is it like the Bermuda Triangle, perhaps?
We had a theory. There are fan theories that it is. So we're just going to suspend our disbelief on that front for a second and figure it out as we go.
I meant to go over this before the episode. Did you look into what this initial scene is referencing from cinema?
No.
Okay, so I only know this because I watched this movie last year, and I haven't seen all the Mummy movies That's one of my like life's goals. Maybe I'll do it this
The
year.
Mummy, like the franchise The Mummy?
Oh, yes.
But you love The Mummy. You
I
haven't
know.
seen all
I
the
do.
Mummy movies?
I haven't seen them all. I know.
Oh my God.
I love them so much.
It wouldn't surprise me so much if you didn't love it so much, the original.
So I haven't seen any of the Universal Mummy movies from the like 30s, 40s, 50s. But
wow.
what I did see was when the franchise was relaunched through Hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And the first movie they made was The Mummy in 1959, starring Christopher Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene where the main bad guy hires these two cart drivers to deliver the mummy in his box to his house to sort of circumvent the whole plot, the whole plan. But they get drunk before they deliver it. So it's these two drivers, and they're driving on a road at night. And because of their reckless driving, the cart topples and dumps the mummy into a bog.
Oh.
Where then the mummy is later resurrected to begin his killing spree. So this is sort of referencing that late night drive by two drivers.
Okay.
And they have to dump whatever they're trying the item, the cargo.
But I guess in that case, it's unintentional. And in the case of our cat burglars, it's very intentional.
Yeah, they just sort of updated to make it silly for Courage, I think. But
Okay.
in my mind,
I'm
whole
sure
time...
there are layers of mummy references, and we've got
absolutely.
so much real world history to unpack with this episode.
There are only like 12 mummy movies made
Yeah.
to be referencing. But yeah, I think it's pulling a lot from all of them.
That's fair. That's a fair assumption, I think.
Plus the real life history.
So like you're saying, the cats decide that the jig might be up, and they pull over to bury the artifact at the nearest landmark, which just so happens to be the bag's water pump.
Yeah.
And they plan to return for it later when the heat's off.
Hey! What happened to the road?
In a rather unsettling display, their escape is thwarted by a fog settling on the road in front of them, and we see the shadow of a mummy rise on the hood of the car.
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
Curse? What curse?
Curse? What curse?
Not believing in the curse at first, which
Every thief's downfall.
the mere appearance of the mummy would have probably convinced me of the curse. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
But the thieves and their vehicle are then completely consumed by the approaching swarm of locusts, complete with buzzsaw sound effects.
What's going on out there?
The next morning, Courage goes to investigate and finds this slab with several hieroglyphs, including the mummy itself, a phonograph, invented, by the way, in 1877, so probably not part of any actual Egyptian hieroglyphs,
Yeah, probably not.
waves, and a locust-like insect.
Yeah, buddy.
These seem to indicate their associated plagues that we will see throughout the episode.
Why, what's this now?
Courage returns to the farmhouse to show his discovery to Eustace and Muriel, and Eustace says, a very widely quoted, and actually I think this scene has been turned into a meme on the internet.
Well, judging by the markings and the obvious age of the relic, I'd have to say it would be garbage from King Garbage of the Garbage Dynasty.
This moment is a stunningly accurate portrayal of the ignorance and closed-mindedness to history and culture that can sometimes be bred in these isolated environments.
Oh, very delicately put.
Thank you. But naturally, Eustace changes his tune when the magical Spirit TV instantly shows them today's breaking news story by the Nowhere Newsman.
But the big story today, $1 million slab stolen from the tomb of King Ramses.
Eustace rises from his easy chair to pluck the slab from the window through which he just tossed it, with no apology or acknowledgement to Courage, total gaslighting,
Oh, yeah.
exclaiming,
I'm rich!
Reward, that's for me.
"That's for me." Muriel argues that it's stolen and should be returned to its rightful place, but Eustace contends that because he said $1 million slab, that means I get $1 million.
Flawed logic at best.
Eustace says, and you know what $1 million means.
That's right! New lawn chairs!
God, I love the logic. And I love how everything is always $1 million.
$1 million.
It's $1 million reward. It's $1 million.
Because $1 million is the most amount of money that a kid can fathom, pretty much.
Probably.
That was how it was for me. And, you know, who wants to be a millionaire? The $1 million was always the
Right.
prize. Always.
Yes, in pop
And this
culture,
was
that is the
the
number.
heyday of that
Oh, I've seen Slumdog. I know.
game show.
I know.
During this exchange, a worried Courage keeps his eyes on the slab, and as he watches, the image of the mummy disappears completely. Gulp. He does some mummy charades in an attempt to warn his caregivers.
Nowhere news? I want to put an ad in the paper.
But Eustace still calls to place a for sale ad, I assume, in the Nowhere newspaper.
This was ridiculous.
Yes, sir. You start running that ad right away.
The fact that he doesn't even give them an ad, he just says, I want to put an ad in the paper. Cool, you run that ad now.
And that also kind of made me laugh because that's how it happens for a kid. You know what I mean?
in
Like
a
they don't
kid's
pay
mind.
attention to the details.
Right,
In a
right.
kid's mind, you call the ads placed, you got a done deal. Like
And
it's
there's
over.
instantly a knock at the door. Seemingly, apparently from
From the
placing
ad.
the ad.
It is from the ad, which I find that to be super funny also, that it's just instantaneous.
It's hilarious.
I am Professor Frith of the Institute of the Ephemera. I've come to retrieve the slab.
There on the porch stands Professor Frith of the Institute of the Pharaoh.
The
Who is,
Pharaoh.
by the way, voiced by Simon Preble, same guy who voices the computer.
Oh, hell
And
yeah.
he has come to retrieve the slab.
What's your offer?
I feel like news travels real fast around here, almost supernaturally so, in nowhere.
News travels fast in nowhere.
Courage's charades get more intense, including morphing into an image of the sinking Titanic, complete with a My Heart Will Go On-esque overture. Do you happen to know why the Titanic might be referenced in such a moment as this, Christian?
Because there was a mummy on the Titanic?
Do you know that to be true, or are you guessing?
Yes.
Well, yes, some people say that the curse of a mummy was actually the reason that the Titanic sank in the first place. It was apparently
It is why.
a cursed artifact in a museum and was purchased and being transported to America via the Titanic when it sank.
That's when it sunk the Titanic.
Yes, that's when the mummy sunk the Titanic.
Yes, the curse of the mummy
It wasn't
sunk.
an iceberg after all.
Well, who put the iceberg there?
The mummy, obviously.
The mummy's curse. Duh. Stupid.
This is not proven fact, but I did find it in my research, and it made this moment make so much more sense. Because at first I thought, why? Why the Titanic?
It's such a throwaway moment.
Sir, the Institute for Ephemera is member supported. About for every $1 million donation, you'll receive this sporty tote bag with our thanks.
So, like, giving the slab back is his $1 million donation
Yes,
to
that would
the
be
Institute.
He has
because
a
it's
$1
worth
million
$1 million.
artifact. He's going to donate it. That's a $1 million donation. Exactly.
All right. Okay.
But this gets the professor a door slammed in his face. And though Muriel and Courage continue to protest, Eustace is hell-bent on selling the slab for the fortune that is due him.
Yeah, but who's he going to sell it to? That's the big question. He has no idea.
He has no idea.
He has no idea what he's doing.
The only organization that's going to want this is this Institute of the Pharaoh.
I know.
They want it and they need it.
What he needs to do is go on the internet on that computer up there and find
Computer
some
would be very helpful with this,
multi-millionaire
yes.
in a different country and sell it to them.
It's true.
He'd probably just get LeQuack, though.
There
Every
are
time.
probably a lot of evil entities that would want to get their hands on this if they could.
Courage villains that would show up. God.
In nowhere.
That'd be a whole movie.
Hence placing the ad in Nowhere News, I guess.
Yeah.
I was thinking that as I watched, who in Nowhere has $1 million to give you, Eustace?
Just old money bags. But he died, so.
But he's dead. That night, as they relax in the living room, Eustace is clutching the slab and rocking back and forth, excitedly rattling off a list of things he intends to buy with his $1 million.
Fly swatter, spark plugs, shovel handle, razor blade, light bulb for the attic.
These are all things that any old man has on his wish list.
An old man
and probably
or
Christian too.
or me, right? I was
Yeah.
about to say I have never related to Eustace more because one, if I had something worth $1 million, I wouldn't even know how to sell it.
No.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
That's what we're saying. Yeah, that seems like a daunting task just to sell it.
If like a massive blood diamond or something just fell in my lap, I wouldn't know what to do.
I wouldn't know the first thing because you're going to end up having to pay somebody to help you sell it.
Yeah,
you know?
and then you get scammed, you get cheated, somebody steals it. Like that's such a scary world to be in.
It is.
But also the things that I think that I would do with $1 million.
Are all the same things that Eustace would do.
Like seriously, I'm like I could fix the light in my attic.
All of these items could be yours.
Just the most basic, simple things.
Oh yeah, both of us would be very practical.
how many
were we
batteries-
to come into a fortune?
You know how many double A's I could just keep around the house if I had $1 million? Never
You would
run out
never
again.
Run out.
Never run out again.
Oh my god, we're simple people.
I'm easy to please.
In this moment, the doorknob starts to shake, and this leads to one of the most memorable scenes in Courageology.
I'm so ready.
When Eustace opens the door, there, standing in the field in front of the farmhouse, is a CGI mummy, Ramses, complete with flowing gauze and cloaked in an ethereal fog. We hear the familiar phrase,
Suffer my curse.
What's your offer?
I've often wondered this, as we did earlier, so I'm here to tell you that Ramses was voiced by John Dilworth himself, although uncredited.
I was hoping it was Dylan.
This also marks one of the first attempts to mix mediums in the series.
Nice.
This night you will be visited by 3 plagues, each worse than the last. Return the slab.
God, I love
The
it so
fact
much.
that it's 3 plagues is also very reminiscent of Scrooge's situation in A Christmas Carol.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
3
Haunted
ghosts.
by 3 spirits, visited by 3 plagues, each worse than the last.
Oh, you're right.
Pretty sure that's a direct reference.
And I'm noticing more and more how often everything that's done comes in 3s.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's a 4th, it's that same like alternate 4th. Like one of these things is not like the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's always that. But I love how everything comes in 3s.
Just
the rule
about
of 3.
every single, It's a very, very, very ancient story device, I think, plot device.
Yes. Yes.
According to IMDb Trivia, Ramses' CGI appearance was designed by John Dilworth's late brother Jim,
Oh.
who also designed the CGI bugle monster that we'll meet later in our
wow.
Courage journey.
Yeah.
An inspiration for the design of Ramses was taken from Parappa the Rapper, which is a Japanese rhythm PlayStation game released in 1997.
Okay.
I never personally played this game, but if you look at the images, it is not a big leap to make at all. And as for the voice,
Weird.
supposedly John Dilworth initially came up with this Ramses voice when he and his brother were trying to scare their mother,
Wow.
but unverified. This, of course, brings us to the subject, though, of cursed tombs.
Yeah, dude, I've been so pumped for this.
Wikipedia had a little bit to share with us about cursed tombs that I'm going to go ahead and let you read, Christian.
I meant to go look back because I totally researched into some of this when I was looking up stuff for Halloween Tree back in October.
That would make sense.
Which, if you guys are just now listening, no, we haven't covered that yet, but we will.
We will.
But there was a lot of stuff about ancient Egypt in there, and so I did a ton of research into all of their confusing mythology, why there are curses to begin with, why it's such a bad omen to unseal a tomb, and that kind of thing.
Right.
So I've been all about this since like October.
Dang.
September, really. The curse of the pharaohs, or the mummy's curse, is a curse alleged to be cast upon anyone who disturbs the mummy of an ancient Egyptian, especially a pharaoh. This curse, which does not differentiate between thieves and archaeologists, is claimed to cause bad luck, illness, or death. Since the mid-20th century, many authors and documentaries have argued that the curse is real in the sense of having scientifically explicable causes, such as bacteria, fungi, or radiation. However, the modern origins of Egyptian mummy curse tales, their development primarily in European cultures, the shift from magic to science to explain curses, and their changing uses, from condemning disturbance of the dead to entertaining horror film audiences, suggest that Egyptian curses are primarily a cultural, not scientific phenomenon.
That is what we postulate, but it is all rather cultural. But I would like to take us back to the origin of said curse, or at least its origin in the modern world, the Western world, to explore where it came from and why we assume these curses.
Okay.
The idea of a mummy's curse, or especially a pharaoh's curse, became especially popular in culture with the dawn of modern Egyptology in 1922 when the tomb of King Tutankhamun was discovered in the Valley of the Kings by excavators led by the Egyptologist Howard Carter, more than 3,300 years after Tutankhamun's death and burial.
Oof.
This is likely where the writers of Courage and most mummy movies we know and love would have gotten a lot of their material.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the tombs of most pharaohs were plundered by grave robbers in ancient times, Tutankhamun's tomb was hidden by debris for most of its existence and therefore not extensively robbed. It thus became the first known largely intact royal burial from ancient Egypt. So, the belief in a curse was brought to many people's attention due to the deaths of a few members of Howard Carter's team and other prominent visitors to the tomb shortly thereafter.
Right.
So this is the first time that the Western world is really getting a glimpse into ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Into the artifacts, into the lifestyle. They're making all of these discoveries in the 1920s.
And this is within, this is all within like 100 years of the colonization of Egypt. Like there's Great Britain, but like France even
Right.
occupied it before.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, you're right. The Western world is like moving into this land.
For the first time.
And it's just plundering and just taking things.
Mostly, I think, for educational purposes to learn, but obviously there was a lot of money in it as well.
Oh, for sure.
Which is, kind of terrible when you think about it. And this is what I think really cemented the idea or belief in a curse. Maybe this is something sacred that we shouldn't be messing with.
I think that speaks a lot to the cultural aspect of it.
I think it speaks a lot to the cultural guilt.
Yeah.
Honestly, myself.
It's a fair point.
But what were these deaths associated with Carter's team? I'm going to begin at the beginning.
I love this stuff. I love this stuff so much.
The famous Egyptologist Henry James Breasted worked with Carter soon after the first opening of the tomb. He reported how Carter sent a messenger on an errand to his house. On approaching his home, the messenger thought he heard a faint, almost human cry. And when he reached the entrance, he saw that the birdcage inside the house was occupied by a cobra, the symbol of the Egyptian monarchy.
Holy shit.
Carter's canary had died in its mouth, and this fueled local rumors of a curse.
Yowza.
Arthur Weigall, a previous Inspector General of Antiquities to the Egyptian government, reported that this was interpreted as Carter's house being broken into by the royal cobra.
Yeah.
This is the same animal that was worn on the king's head in representation of striking their enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened on the very day the king's tomb was being broken into.
Jeez.
An account of this incident was even reported in the New York Times on December 22nd, 1922. The first of the deaths associated with Carter's team was that of Lord Carnarvon, who financed the excavation.
This guy.
He had been bitten by a mosquito.
Yeah.
And later slashed the bite accidentally while shaving. Trigger warning if you don't like medical stuff.
Or shaving.
It became infected, and that resulted in blood poisoning.
Wow.
2 weeks before he died, Marie Corelli wrote an imaginative letter that was published in New York World Magazine, in which she quoted an obscure book that confidently asserted that dire punishment would follow any intrusion into a sealed tomb.
Yeah.
So this occurrence, combined with this warning that seems to have been published in an effort to, become sensationalized, just so happened to have succeeded.
Yeah.
Because a media frenzy followed this, with reports that a curse had been found in the king's tomb. This frenzy even caused the apparently superstitious Benito Mussolini, who had once accepted an Egyptian mummy as a gift, to order its immediate removal from his home.
Yeah, get out of my house. First order of business.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes and a spiritualist that comes up pretty often on That's Pretty Dark,
Yep.
suggested that Lord Carnarvon's death had been caused by elementals created by Tutankhamun's priests to guard the royal tomb.
Elementals.
And this further fueled the media interest.
God, I love it. I want to live in this world. I want all of this to be true.
Do
I
you
need
really?
this swirling around. Oh, absolutely. Because I'm never going to steal a mummy.
Man, I don't know that I do.
I'm never going to steal a mummy.
Well, that's true. I'm never going to steal a mummy either.
I'm never going to take a cursed object from another culture, like pluck it from the culture and just take it home.
Yeah, we would be safe in that regard, I guess.
But I do want a dead man's hand. So. Or bazaar.
Arthur Weigall also reported that 6 weeks before Carnarvon's death, he had watched the Earl laughing and joking as he entered the king's tomb, and he said to a nearby reporter, H.V. Morton, that day, "I give him 6 weeks to live."
Oh, shit.
So he kind of called it.
Yeah.
In an even stranger coincidence, the first autopsy carried out on the body of Tutankhamun himself by Dr. Derry found a healed lesion on his left cheek.
What?
But Carnarvon had been buried 6 months before this autopsy took place, so it wasn't possible to determine if the location of the wound on the king corresponded with the fatal mosquito bite on Carnarvon.
Oh, damn.
But it could have. And that, to me, is very spooky.
That's really spooky.
Perhaps this is part of what took him down, so he mirrored it in the curse, which, that gives me the heebie-jeebies.
This is the kind of stuff that gives me the warm fuzzies. Like, this helps me sleep
Gives
at
you
night.
the warm fuzzies.
This actually helps me sleep, because I feel like I live in a world of magic and, spooky.
Justice of some kind.
Darkness. Yeah, well, I don't even care about the justice. It's just the fact that a dead, mummy can extend its own demise onto another person who disrupts its slumber.
That is rather interesting.
It's beautiful.
From his place of eternal rest.
Yeah, you disturb my sleep, you're going to get what,
I'm going to get what's coming.
What put me here in the first place.
In 1925, the anthropologist Henry Field reported how a paperweight given to Carter's friend Sir Bruce Ingram was composed of a mummified hand with its wrist adorned with a scarab bracelet,
Oh, wow.
which was marked with cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence.
It's like literally there saying, do not give this as a gift.
Basically, don't
basically
do this.
Saying,
Which
don't do
I think it was given from Carter to Bruce Ingram. So it kind of feels like Carter laughing in the face of this supposed curse.
Yeah.
But soon after receiving this gift of a paperweight with a hand, Ingram's house burned down.
Oh, shit.
Followed by a flood.
Oh, God.
After it was rebuilt.
Oh,
fire, water.
What was the last one again?
And pestilence, I guess. Pestilence, but
No pestilence?
I don't have a report of what happened to Ingram after that.
If he'd survived. Well, did he survive?
I think so.
I guess he survived. Who got sick?
Howard Carter himself remained entirely skeptical of such curses, commenting that the sentiment of the Egyptologist is not one of fear, but of respect and awe, entirely opposed to foolish superstitions.
I mean, yeah, but that's any explorer. The guys that went down in the submersible back in the summer last year, whatever, and just imploded. I mean, yeah, they didn't go down in fear, but, you know.
Sometimes a healthy fear is okay.
Yes.
Ask me how I know, because you and I have that in spades.
We believe in healthy fear here.
In May of 1926, Carter did report in his diary a sighting of a jackal of the same type as the Anubis, which is in Egyptian culture the guardian of the dead.
Yeah.
For the first time in over 35 years working in the desert.
Oh, shit.
But he didn't attribute it to supernatural causes.
He just saw one.
Whereas I'm like, how couldn't you?
Jackal spotted.
He'd been working in the deserts for 35 years, and then he just so happens to see a jackal for the first time ever.
You know, that's like the Nextdoor app, how they're always like, everybody be aware, there's coyotes by the train tracks. Just there's coyotes running the streets these days. You're going to sell drugs to your children. Be careful out there, everybody. The Cairo Nextdoor app would say like, beware, jackal spotted.
Right?
Jackals in the neighborhood.
Keep your pets indoors, ladies and gentlemen.
Hide your children. Hide your
Thems
wife.
and theys. Hide all of them. Hide everybody.
Hide your cats and your small dogs.
Skeptics have pointed out, obviously, that many others who visited the tomb or helped with the excavation lived long and healthy lives.
Right.
A study showed that of the 58 people who were present when the tomb and sarcophagus were opened, only 8 died within the next 12 years.
Only 8?
Only 8?
Yeah, within an isolated
8
event.
seems like a lot to
8
me.
people to die from this one thing. Those statistics have to be just outrageous. 8 of 50.
But it was within the next 12 years, so they didn't all happen immediately.
I mean,
I'll say
everyone
that
dies
much.
eventually, I guess. But I wonder how many people who were calling the shots were the ones that died. Were like 8 people like...
Who made the decision to do, the excavation.
Were they all like white people from England?
I believe
or was
so.
it?
I can't say that though for certain. I don't know.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, you know what I'm saying?
Ethnicities and backgrounds.
Kill 100% of the white folks that come down to my tomb.
So that's just the story of the discovery of King Tut's tomb.
Before we move on, I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever heard about this before, but King Tut, he had a butt.
How did I know you? I could see it on your face. You weren't even making a face, and I could see it.
What color
was it?
I held that together pretty well, I think. I was really excited.
You did.
I thought I was delivering it very nicely.
I had already had the thought earlier in my research that you were probably going to do that to me.
The only thing I bring to the table.
I know you pretty well these days. I can see it coming from a mile away. But I feel like any millennial would probably think of that rhyme.
King Tut's butt. You can see it coming from a mile away.
But yes, that is just the story of King Tut and his butt.
King Tut's
if
butt, yes.
If we walk the idea back through time, we actually find that recorded curses found within tombs are considered pretty rare. And that's possibly because the idea of such a desecration was unthinkable and even dangerous to record. It was dangerous to do. To call on these curses was considered dangerous for those who were dying and being buried. They didn't want to risk it themselves.
I'm sure anybody, grave robbing is an ancient, occupation.
Occupation. It's a generous term.
But I don't think anybody robbing a tomb is like stopping to read the hieroglyphs. You know what I'm saying?
No,
I'm sure
probably
I'm sure no one really even knows like what's there or what's been said.
Well, it depends. I guess it depends on when it's happening because like I talked about earlier, a lot of the tombs were pillaged very soon after, the deceased was buried. So
yeah,
it could have been that it was in their native language or a language that they did understand. I don't know what the literacy rates were.
Yeah, I know. I just mean like stopping to record what's in the tomb. That's not their main focus. But I'm sure they found a bunch of already, robbed tombs, like in modern history.
It's so interesting, to
They
imagine.
go, whoop, somebody already took this one. You know?
Well, they're hope they get whatever's coming to them. You know what I mean? Like, they
Mother.
couldn't be me.
Them sons of bitches took this mummy already.
When these curses are found, though, they most frequently occur in private tombs of the Old Kingdom era. The tomb of Ankhtifi, which was in the 9th to 10th dynasty somewhere, contains the warning: any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may Hemen, who was a local deity, not accept any goods he offers, and may his heir not inherit.
Wow, okay.
Should I let you read this one?
Sure.
You can read a curse. This is a curse recorded from a tomb in the 6th dynasty.
Yeah, let's read some curses. Well, you want to hang out and read some curses?
Yeah.
As for all men who shall enter this my tomb, impure, there will be judgment. An end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into him. Oh, shit.
It feels like this ruler had an ego. But
yeah, holy
that's
shit.
fair
I want that on
my in this time frame,
my tombstone.
Pharaohs were essentially considered deities themselves. They were closer to God than any person could be, and essentially did the duties of the gods on earth.
I think I read that too. That was a big, point being made about robbing, especially robbing Pharaoh's tomb.
You were essentially robbing from a deity.
So that's where that whole thing came from of like, well, you wouldn't steal from a god, would you?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be cursed.
Would you dare to do that?
Would you?
Right.
Yeah. Would you dare? Would you dame?
Curses after the Old Kingdom era are less common, though often more severe, because they sometimes invoke the ire of Thoth or the destruction of Sekhmet,
Yes.
other Egyptian gods.
Right.
An example of one of these post-Old Kingdom curses: cursed be those who disturb the rest of a pharaoh. They that break the seal of his tomb shall meet death by a disease that no doctor can diagnose. And boy, if I don't relate to that one.
Yeah, what did you do last year? Did you take a trip to Egypt?
I have never been to Egypt, I swear.
Who did you steal from? Did you accept any packages?
Never been there.
Did you sign for any packages that you weren't expecting?
When we try to walk it back even further, we do have to remember that hieroglyphs weren't even deciphered by the Western world really until the early 19th century. So reports of curses before this are simply perceived bad luck associated with the handling of mummies or other artifacts from tombs.
Yeah.
But I will share some other anecdotes of some other curses from a couple of different sources, including scoopempire.com, and let you all decide what you believe for yourselves.
All right.
These are basically like ghost stories, but instead they're mummy curse stories. So isolated incidents that occur around a potential mummy's curse.
In 1699, Louis Penneker wrote an account in which he recorded how a Polish traveler bought 2 mummies in Alexandria to study for therapeutic purposes and embarked on a sea journey with the mummies in the cargo hold. The traveler was alarmed by recurring visions of 2 specters, and the stormy seas did not abate until the mummies were thrown overboard. Oh my God.
Pretty much a straight up ghost story, because it's like those spirits were haunting him until he put the mummies back. But I can't imagine the mummies were that much happier at the bottom of the ocean.
No. Out of the boat and into the sea.
Yep.
They didn't know what was coming for them.
Frying pan and into the fire.
Jeez. That's really nuts. I love that, though. I love how many old stories about curses and like warnings and stuff come from being on a boat and choppy waters and like nightmares. Like not only was in the Bible, but was in Dracula.
It feels very ancient for sure.
Yeah.
Zahi Hawass recalled that as a young archaeologist excavating at Qam Abu Bilo, he had to transport several artifacts from the Greco-Roman site. He states that his cousin died on that day when he was excavating these artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
His uncle died on the 1st anniversary of that excavation. And on the 3rd anniversary of that excavation, his aunt died.
Oh, wow.
Years later, when he excavated the tombs of the builders of the pyramids at Giza, he encountered the curse, which read, "All people who enter this tomb, who will make evil against this tomb and destroy it, may the crocodile be against them in the water, and snakes against them on land. May the hippopotamus be against them in water, and the scorpion on land."
I don't want any of that. No.
Though claiming not to be superstitious, Hawass decided this time not to disturb the mummies. However, he also claims he was later involved in the removal of 2 child mummies from Baharia Oasis to a museum, and reported that he was haunted by the children in his dreams, a phenomenon which he claims did not stop until the mummy of the father was reunited with the children in the museum.
Yeah.
So this same archaeologist had several different encounters with potential curses.
Sounds like he carried a lot of weight with him.
Mm-hmm.
He must have really felt strongly about a lot of this stuff.
I would think so.
Some deep-seated guilt.
Yeah, he says he wasn't superstitious, but he definitely seems to.
Sounds like that's wishful thinking. I'm not superstitious. I don't really believe in any of this stuff. I just happen to believe
I just really want
all
it to stop happening to me. Kind of sounds like us.
Yeah, for real. Egyptologist Walter Bryan Emery discovered a little statue of Osiris, the Egyptian god of death, during an excavation near Saqqara in 1971. He and his assistant returned to the dig site's headquarters in a nearby village at the end of the day. Emery brought the Osiris statue with him. He then headed to the bathroom to shower when he arrived at his house. His helper began to hear Emery weeping after a few moments. He dashed over to the man and discovered him gripping the sink's basin, apparently traumatized. Emery was diagnosed with right-sided paralysis and was unable to communicate. The next day, he passed away.
It got him.
Oh, wow.
Something did.
So yeah, he took the statue home with him.
Took the statue home with him, took a shower, and never recovered.
Yeah, that's scary.
And there's no telling like what he saw. That's what got me about that one is like,
yeah, who knows what he saw?
Something happened to him, what he saw or how he felt in those moments, but he wasn't able to communicate again before he died.
Yeah, that's crazy. It sounds like he had a stroke, but I mean, my God.
It does.
Or like a hemorrhage of some kind, like an aneurysm.
And the last one in the list I had of cursed mummy stories. An ancient Egyptian treasure was given to the German embassy in Egypt in 2007 with a note from an anonymous sender confessing that it had cost him and his family nothing but grief and anguish since its theft. The thief allegedly stole the artifact as a memento while in Egypt and brought it back to Germany, but he soon became ill with an unexplained ailment. He developed a fever and his disease progressed to paralysis and death.
Shit.
The thief's stepson sent the relic back because he feared that until it was returned to Egypt, his family and his stepfather's soul would suffer.
That's such a common story, though, of like taking things that are cursed that don't belong to you from other cultures and then mailing them back.
Yeah, just stealing things in general.
Or like even like Robert the Doll, people who visit him and then take pictures without asking permission.
I didn't mean it.
They have to write him a letter saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me. My life has been in shambles ever since, I left.
There is a lot of this theme of taking something that's not yours, taking something without asking, violating consent.
Yes, violating consent.
Please, listener, keep that in mind. Keep that concept in mind because I think it's central, honestly, to this whole Western idea of the mummy's curse. Just in case we haven't met our Egyptology quota yet, which, I mean, I myself personally never get sick of Egyptology, so I feel like I hope that we're in good company here and you're enjoying yourself, listener. I do want to take a second here to attempt to differentiate between king and pharaoh, because that's something that tripped me up a little bit, and I think we should, as best we can, respect the culture and better understand what that difference is.
Sure.
According to Britannica, pharaoh, from the Egyptian, translates to something like great house, which originally meant the royal palace in ancient Egypt. The word pharaoh then came to be used instead for the Egyptian king under the New Kingdom, starting in the 18th dynasty, which was around 1539 to 1292 BCE. And by the 22nd dynasty, which was 945 to 730 BCE, it had been adopted as a symbol of respect.
Gotcha.
But pharaoh was never the king's formal title, though. And its modern use as a generic name for all Egyptian kings is based on the usage of pharaoh in the Hebrew Bible, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In official documents, the full title of the Egyptian king consisted of 5 names, each preceded by one of the following titles: Horus, 2 ladies, Golden Horus, king of Upper and Lower Egypt, and son of Re. The last name was given to him at birth and the others at his coronation.
Very straightforward and simple. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm not confused at all.
Definitely not. Basically, the word pharaoh didn't mean king. It meant the palace or the great house, the ancient Egyptian palace. But over time, it started to be used synonymously with king but it was never the actual title of the king. And the actual title of an Egyptian king is kind of complicated because it has 5 titles within it that give you information about the king's dynasty, his familial standing, and each god. And those 5 titles kind of give you more information about the king.
Sure.
Basically.
Crystal clear. Got it.
And he gets one at birth, and then he gets the rest of them when he's coronated.
I'm an Egyptologist now. I know everything there is to know.
Also, there were 11 kings named Ramses, but judging from his red hair, the red hair in this Courage episode, this Ramses was likely meant to represent Ramses II or Ramses the Great.
Oh, okay.
The red hair apparently is a giveaway.
So that guy had red hair, or one of those guys had red hair. Both of them.
Both of those guys did.
How do we know?
As we were saying earlier, the king or the pharaoh held almost a godlike position in Egyptian society.
Right.
Responsible for not only religion, but also all the civil duties as well.
Mm-hmm.
The king was also responsible for maintaining the Mat, or cosmic order of balance and justice. And part of this included going to war when necessary to defend the country or attacking others, when it was believed that this would contribute to the Mat, such as to obtain resources.
That's me, Mott, Christian Mott, resourceful, choosing my battles.
M-A-A-T.
Oh,
Mat.
yeah. Well.
The cosmic balance of justice.
I'm nothing if not cosmically balanced. Just.
Yes, that's exactly how I would describe you, as would our listeners, I'm sure. So, back in nowhere.
Always getting back to nowhere.
Eustace is convinced that this CGI terror before him is Professor Frith trying to trick him into returning the artifact.
Who's he kidding? I can see the zipper on that cheap dime store costume.
I want to start calling it a dime store, the 5 and dime.
I think
Dime
about it
store.
like that. That's what my mom called it. My dad's mom. She called things the dime store, the 5 and dime. Want to go to the 5 and dime? Even if it was Winn-Dixie or whatever. 5 and dime. That's just what she called things. In this moment, it also made me laugh that Eustace was living up to his description in one of our earliest introduction episodes of Courage the Cowardly Dog when we talked about it on That's Pretty Dark, because he thinks he's smarter than the scientists.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the kind of hat that Dilworth said Eustace might wear today?
Today it might be red.
With the slab hidden behind his back, Courage can see the image of the waves fade away and immediately feels a drip of water on his nose. It's raining. Indoors.
Courage, did you leave the tub running?
Water pours not only from the ceiling, but out of every window, behind every picture, and down the stairs.
Dude, yeah, they gave the living room a fireplace because they needed to put a moose head hanging over the fireplace so it can act like a gargoyle.
Yes.
And spew water out of every orifice.
Water into the living room. Yeah, they added it for this episode. We see it like in one other episode, but that moose head was definitely meant for this moment.
Totally.
Though they run upstairs for higher ground, the water keeps climbing higher and higher as well. Muriel, in a very rare, frantic state, is searching for Eustace, who we see stubbornly sitting under the surface of the water, wrapped around the slab, breathing through a snorkel. And I don't suppose anybody told him that that's not how snorkels work.
Yeah, well, don't you know in cartoons, if you don't know the logic of the physics and the reality,
it can't hurt you.
It doesn't apply to you. What you don't know can't hurt you.
Not in a cartoon.
In a cartoon.
Courage takes it upon himself to swim down to the basement and unplug the incredibly convenient drain, which empties the house in record time.
Right, more cartoon logic. There's a plug at the bottom.
There's a plug, you pull the plug, it drains the tub. That's how this works. Of course, this disappoints Ramses, who literally says, "Aw, come on." With another warning and another rejection by Eustace, Ramses lifts his arms in the creepiest way, if you ask my child self watching this, to call in the second plague. And suddenly, loud music and vocalizations fill the farmhouse. This is The Manning Gauze, a Jody Gray original, the vocals too, we learned. Yep. A song sure to be as instantly recognizable to any Courage fan as Ramses' plea itself. Although, I don't find it as off-putting as the bags seem to. TV Tropes calls this faux horrific, stating, "The second plague is gratingly catchy disco music. The entire cast treats it as if it's the worst of tortures." Which is the joke in and of
That's
itself.
what Jody said. He was like, I need to come up with the most annoying thing I can think of. It's so good.
And it really isn't that bad.
I like it, but I grew up loving courage.
It's nostalgic for us.
Right. At this point, it's
so.
nostalgia.
While the bags roll around in agony from the sound, Eustace plugs his ears with giant pieces of cotton, and Courage sets off to find the source of the noise, which he does after searching high and low behind a lone rock. Once the phonograph has been destroyed by the baseball bat Courage apparently keeps in his Mary Poppins pockets for such times as this,
The hammer space.
we return to the farmhouse, where Muriel is once again begging Eustace to comply.
Eustace, what are you waiting for? Till we're 6 feet under?
Eustace tells Ramses that a million's as low as he'll go.
Stubborn old man.
And this ushers in the third, final, and most chilling plague of all. The locusts descend.
That swarm of locusts.
Courage runs screaming as they devour each of the farm accoutrement we've seen. The pump, the chicken coop, the pickup truck, minus its rubber tires. As they approach the house, Muriel runs screaming while Courage and Eustace fight over the slab. It's a rarity to see Muriel so in tune with the danger, which is possibly one of the elements that made this episode so frightening as a child who was familiar with the tropes of the show. Mm-hmm. Muriel's afraid. I definitely need to be afraid now.
Oh, yeah.
While I don't want to get too deep into the idea of plagues the way we think of them from like a biblical standpoint, for example, since we're saving some of that for our coverage of the DreamWorks classic Prince of Egypt one day, I would like to reassure any listeners still plagued by locust nightmares since this episode that unlike what we see here, locusts do not and really cannot eat people or most objects.
No, of course not.
Locusts are herbivorous by nature and most of the time don't pose much of a threat. But obviously, as history and legend inform us, sometimes they do.
Destroy a field of wheat.
Wikipedia tells us that normally these grasshoppers are innocuous, their numbers are low, and they don't pose major economic or material threat to agriculture. However, under suitable conditions of drought following rapid vegetation growth, serotonin in their brains triggers dramatic change.
Oh, shit.
They start to breed abundantly, and the more locusts that they meet, the more serotonin they make.
Wow.
Thus, they become gregarious, which is the nature term for interacting with others.
Yeah, so they're extroverts.
And they become nomadic and migratory when their populations become dense enough. So, basically, if they're deprived of serotonin literally for a long period of time and experience a sudden boom, they freak the out and throw ragers. Basically,
they're theater students.
That's essentially why locusts behave like this.
That's pretty insane.
No,
and not only that, but these are nowhere locusts, and they're also potentially undead mummy locusts that come from
ancient Egypt.
Ancient
tomb
Egypt.
Somewhere. We really don't know.
Very supernatural.
When this happens, they form bands of wingless nymphs that later become swarms of winged adults. Both the bands and the swarms move around, rapidly strip fields and damage crops. And the adults are powerful flyers, which we know they can travel great distances, consuming most of the green vegetation wherever the swarm settles.
Wow.
I myself was curious about the actual amount of locusts that are typically present in a group like this.
Isn't it like millions? Billions?
A large swarm can consist of billions of locusts spread out over an area of thousands of square kilometers with a population of up to 200 million per square mile.
Damn, dude.
200 million. And they're not small. I mean, they're small, but they're not. You know what I mean? Like for an insect, they're
large.
Big.
Yeah.
200 million per square mile.
I could see why there would be, ominous stories told across agricultural
history
societies of like,
exactly.
Oh, when the locusts come, they don't go until they take everything.
The formation of initial bands of gregarious hoppers is called an outbreak. And trust me, I don't like that any more than you do.
Yowza.
When these outbreaks join into larger groups, the event is known as an upsurge.
Okay.
And continuing agglomerations of upsurges on a regional level originating from a number of separate breeding locations are literally known as plagues.
Oh, well, there you go.
That's what the group is called.
Well, that's where it comes from.
During outbreaks in the early stages of upsurges, only part of the locust population becomes gregarious, with scattered bands of hoppers spread out over a large area. But as time goes by, the insects become more cohesive, and the bands become concentrated in a smaller area.
Wow.
In the desert locust plague in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia that lasted from 1966 to 1969, the number of locusts increased from 2 to 30 billion over 2 generations.
Whoa.
But the area that they covered decreased from over 39,000 square miles to 1,900 square miles.
That's a horror film.
It's almost impossible to fathom.
That's where like blacking out the sun comes from.
So scary. It's just so scary, dude. It's very scary to me.
That's terrifying.
Plagues of locusts are pervasive in literature and media, obviously, like you were saying, particularly in ancient times. And they were often depicted as a symbol of divine judgment, which is part of why I think it remains such an eerie and supernatural idea to us today.
Yeah.
It's not a supernatural curse, just a natural evolutionary process.
I would feel totally cursed, though, if this happened.
Right. I can completely understand how ancient people would take a plague of locusts as like a bad omen, especially because it could then begat famine and disease.
Your entire existence depends on what you can get the ground to produce for you. Mm-hmm. If a plague like this shows up, this is a horror film. It's
a horrifying ordeal to experience, and I truly can't imagine dealing with it.
It makes me wonder if that doesn't have some play into why, our English interpretation of the 10 plagues is the word plague. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder if because so much of the Bible is agriculturally based, because they were
agrarian.
If the term plague wasn't just the word that they were using to describe things like this.
I think it absolutely
and it just called
was. I think that's where it comes from. I think that's the etymology of the word. It kind of evolved from meaning that to meaning anything that plagues you, anything that destroys you, anything that haunts you, kind of.
Right. Torment.
The reasons for the tie with locusts to ancient Egypt are also many. Locusts were actually carved on tombs in the period from 2470 to 2220 BCE, likely due to the plagues witnessed by those generations. And as many are probably familiar, like you were just saying, a devastating plague in Egypt is mentioned in the book of Exodus in the Christian Bible. But it doesn't stop at Egypt. Any agrarian society, obviously, has cause to fear locust rampages. Locust plagues are mentioned in the Indian Mahabharata. The Iliad mentions locusts taking to the wing to escape fire.
Yeah.
Plagues of locusts are mentioned in the Quran. In the 9th century BCE, the Chinese authorities appointed anti-locust officers. And in the New Testament of the Christian Bible, John the Baptist was said to survive in the wilderness on locusts and wild honey.
Right.
Which many cultures do eat them and consider them a delicacy, by the way.
Oh, we'll all be eating them in the next 50 years, probably.
Ooh.
When food goes scarce.
Human-headed locusts appear in the book of Revelation in the Christian Bible, essentially described as an army of Satan. Aristotle also studied locusts and their breeding habits. A devastating plague was recorded in 203 BC, describing human epidemics following locust plagues, which were associated with the stench from the putrefying corpses of famine, which linked human disease outbreaks to locust plagues, and this was widespread. A pestilence in the northwestern provinces of China in 311 AD killed 98% of the population locally, and this was blamed on locusts, and may have also been in part caused by an increase in numbers of rats and their fleas that devoured the locust carcasses. Mm-hmm. Icky stuff, right?
When there's famine, every time illness follows in an entire society. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the immune system is so much lower.
And all of these little processes, yeah.
If you're not eating, your immune system drops, and you can no longer fend off
don't I know it.
normal things. Right. So yeah, this is totally checking out that all of this makes sense.
During the last 2 millennia, desert locust plagues have appeared sporadically in Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. And other species of locusts have caused havoc in North and South America, Asia, and Australia. In China, they've had 173 outbreaks over 1,924 years.
Jeez.
The Bombay locust was a major pest in India and Southeastern Asia in the 18th and 19th centuries, but has seldom swarmed since their last plague in 1908.
Okay.
I'm getting itchy thinking about this.
I'm getting hungry.
The extinction of the Rocky Mountain locust has been a source of puzzlement. It swarmed throughout the west of the United States and parts of Canada in the 19th century. And what's called Albert's swarm of 1875 was estimated to contain 12.5 trillion insects, covering an area of 198,000 square miles, larger than the state of California.
Yeah, no.
And the swarm itself would have weighed 27.5 million tons.
Oh, shit.
It makes me so sick to think about. The last specimen of the Rocky Mountain locust was seen alive last in Canada in 1902. And to that I say, good riddance. And I hope you're not hiding out somewhere waiting to come back.
Of course they are.
I think they're pretty much gone because recent research suggests the breeding grounds of this insect in the valleys of the Rocky Mountains came under sustained agricultural development during the large influx of gold miners, which destroyed a lot of their underground eggs.
No.
So,
okay.
Thanks, gold miners.
Thanks for your greed.
The 1915 infestation across Palestine and Syria was one of the main contributors to the famine in Lebanon, which lasted from 1915 to 1918, during which around 200,000 people died. And plagues have become less common in the 20th century, but they do continue to occur when conditions are met.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank goodness that more recently, changes in agricultural practices and better surveillance of locust breeding grounds have allowed control measures at an early stage. Traditional locust control uses insecticides from the ground or the air, but newer biological control methods are proving effective. Swarming behavior decreased substantially in the 20th century, but despite modern surveillance and control methods, swarms can still form. And when suitable weather conditions occur and vigilance lapses, we could still have problems.
Scary thought.
This is kind of an aside, but as I was studying locusts for this episode, I found that swarming behavior, like as its own concept, has so many different rabbit holes that we could explore together. And from a sociological standpoint, it's very interesting when you consider swarming and evolution and why do creatures, animals, whether they're fish or insects, whatever they are, why do they behave like this?
It's insect mob mentality.
Basically is.
Bunch of punks.
For the sake of our show and time, though, I will go with a piece of the puzzle that I found most personally fascinating, which is kind of the theories behind and hypothesis about why animals do evolve these swarming behaviors.
Okay.
Some of these include the selfish herd theory, which says that individuals within a population attempt to reduce their predation risk by putting other creatures between themselves and predators. So basically, if he won't get me if he gets you, like I don't have to run faster. I just have to run. I don't have to outrun the predator. I just have to outrun you.
Right.
There's also the predator confusion effect, which just hopes to confuse whatever's trying to eat you.
Yeah.
And my favorite is called the many eyes theory, which suggests that there are progressively more eyes scanning the environment for predators as a group's size increases. So it's valuable to the creature to keep reproducing and to stick together.
The many eyes theory.
So we've now done Egyptology, biology,
locustology.
Wow. So that's quite a lot going on in this episode, but I feel like these are questions that I had as a kid as I watched the episodes. You know what I mean? I was like, what's the deal with that?
Right.
Especially locusts, because growing up, in a very conservative Christian environment, locusts are referenced all the time.
Oh, I understood this innately from just going to, Bible class.
You learned everything you need to know.
Yeah, it just made sense as a fact of life that, locusts are going to come and just devour everything. And
they're the army of Satan.
And we're going to go to hell.
And that. You can't forget that.
Pretty much nothing you can do about it.
Most important lesson to learn.
Right. Of course.
Back in nowhere, we watch as the locusts munch their way through the upper levels of the farmhouse.
Oof.
Muriel, who is beside herself, does what any self-respecting Depression-era matriarch would do, facing either the end of the world or her own demise. And she cooks herself into a frenzy, using up all the ingredients that she has available to her.
Stress cooking.
She creates a fish stew with 3-layer cake. She makes everything that she can get her hands on.
There's nothing else she knows how to do.
She can't let anything go to waste, I guess. So if the world's going to end, if we're going to go down, I'm going to go down cooking.
I guess so.
My mama was like that too.
I think Muriel would love Pioneer Woman. She'd love it.
When the locusts chew through the living room ceiling, Eustace finally fears for his own life, which is the only emotion that is able to move the needle on his stubbornness, and he relents.
Okay, you can have it.
The self-preservation aspect of being a narcissist.
The self-preservation is the only thing that gets to him. He doesn't care about his family. He doesn't care about his house.
No.
Courage chucks the slab through the window, and the noise stops. All is quiet, and we think maybe the worst is over. But as soon as Eustace feels satisfied that he's not in immediate danger anymore, he exclaims,
"No! I can't believe I did that!"
and runs to collect the slab.
It's mine!
Almost like it was about to stop. Why did I throw it away?
Right.
You can't connect these two dots here.
He can't connect the dots.
Cause and effect.
And he says straight to Ramses,
"That's 3 plagues. You're out of ammo, mister. And don't think you can come around here pushing no tote bags on us, neither.
So he still thinks
No
this is
tote
the
bags.
professor somehow.
But if you do want a tote, we have That's Pretty Dark tote bags in our merch
we
store.
do, and you don't even have to give us $1 million.
No, I think it's like 20, 25. I don't remember how much, $25?
But Eustace has the definition of a one-track mind when it comes to money.
Oh, yeah.
Surprising no one, the Locusts hear their cue again and crest the horizon. And in one final standoff with Ramses, Eustace is scared out of his wits.
About time.
Next thing we know, it's morning in nowhere, and Muriel and Courage are rocking in what's left of the structure of the farmhouse.
At last, the allegedly cursed slab has been returned to King Ramses' crypt, where it will remain buried in antiquity for all time.
Oh, I wonder where Eustace is.
In the last frame, we hear a distant cry from Eustace and zoom in on the crypt to reveal the slab affixed back where it had seemingly been broken off from, with Eustace's image
Yeah.
now replacing the mummies.
What does it mean? Very cryptic.
So at this moment, we need to circle back to our cat burglars. Since we have followed this journey through all 3 plagues, my question for you and our listeners is this. Why were the burglars so surprised at the appearance of the mummy? Had they not gone through their own 3 plagues? Did he only give them one chance because they were the original thieves and they stole it from where it belonged?
That's a good question.
Or, a darker train of thought, did they know then that they were face to face with their own death?
You know, I don't know.
We can't know. We don't know if they experienced the same 3 plagues. We have no idea. But
I don't think there's any way to know that.
Even as a child, as I thought back on it, I was like, why didn't they know what was happening? Surely the locusts had followed them too. Like, you know what I mean?
Who was chasing them?
Right.
Who's in the helicopter?
We assume it was the police.
I mean, yeah, but
I don't know, man.
yeah, there's a lot going on. I don't know.
I don't know. Before we wrap up this segment, I've got one more piece of pop culture mummy curse wisdom from Wikipedia to share with you.
All right.
The idea of a mummy reviving from the dead, an essential element of many mummy curse tales, was developed in The Mummy, or A Tale of the 22nd Century, an early work combining science fiction and horror, which was written by J.N.C. Loudon and published anonymously in 1827.
Right. Yeah, I looked into this. Yeah.
Louisa May Alcott was thought by Dominic Montserrat to have been the first to use a fully formed mummy curse plot in her 1869 story, Lost in a Pyramid, or The Mummy's Curse, a hitherto forgotten piece of mummy fiction that he rediscovered in the late 1990s.
Wow.
However, 2 stories subsequently discovered by S.J. Wolfe, Robert Singerman, and Jasmine Day, The Mummy's Soul, which was written by an anonymous author in 1862, and After 3,000 Years, which was written by Jane G. Austen in 1868, have very similar plots in which a female mummy takes magical revenge upon her male desecrator.
Okay.
Jasmine Day therefore argues that the modern European concept of curses is based upon an analogy between desecration of tombs and rape, interpreting early curse fiction as proto-feminist narratives authored by women.
Yeah. Yeah.
The anonymous and Austen stories predate Alcott's piece, which raises the possibility that even earlier lost mummy curse prototype fiction still awaits rediscovery.
Wow. Yeah, I like that.
I feel like that the dots that we connected earlier about the guilt or the you're defiling something, you are taking something without consent.
Yeah.
I feel like that clearly resonated very much with women of the late 19th century, if not earlier.
That's a lot of what I discovered when I looked into this briefly, was that on the heels of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, there's speculation that that inspired Jane Loudon, who was Jane Webb, when she published the story at 17. There's a lot of speculation that she was inspired directly by Mary Shelley as a female author.
Which, yeah, would make total sense.
To take the concept that she wrote, a horrifying monster of sorts, you know, quote unquote monster.
Women are the originators of sci-fi and horror.
And she took that idea, flipped it, made it a mummy instead, and actually used the concept of a mummy to bring wisdom to a futuristic era, which I think is pretty cool. I want to read the story. I've never read it, but that's what I read into today.
Neither have I.
But one of the most interesting things is that Although I don't think she necessarily romanticized mummies. Maybe from that perspective, you could say it was romantic because it was a nice look at a mummy, a wise, intelligent being. But a lot of literature that focused on reanimated mummies from that time until Universal took over, mummies were romanticized and sexualized. They were often females, stealing, the attention and affection of male protagonists. And I don't know how much of that was just misogynistic and men taking things from female undead corpses or what.
The script got flipped again, basically.
Yeah. So it went from mummies being romantic or, whatever, to monsters. And then Anne Rice, being very familiar with monsters, then wrote her own novel about a mummy and made it romantic again. There's untapped territory there for modern authors to bring mummies somehow into more of a sexual
it's wild. It's wild
I don't know.
Like the way the culture shapes the interpretation of things and the intention even.
Right.
Especially stuff like this. And looking at it from like you're taking what's not yours perspective and the Western guilt around that idea to me is like the most distilled way of making it like almost like a moral, like an Aesop kind of idea.
What I really want to see is take the concept of the mummy's revenge, because that's what the mummy symbolizes, is revenge. Make modern mummies female again. Stop making them
make
men.
Mummies female again.
Make mummies female again. So we need a modern...
But empower them.
Well, of course. But it needs to be a tale of revenge, right? Who did the Promising Young Woman?
Emerald Fennell.
So she should do...
A mummy movie?
A mummy movie where the mummy is female and she's been
I like that a lot.
Desecrated by male Egyptologists.
Archaeologists. You hear us, Emerald, out there?
Yeah.
We would love to be friends with you.
Yeah, buddy.
Speaking of movies, one other reason that this episode might be so well remembered by our generation was because it aired as part of the direct-to-video film Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders in 2000. Screen Rant said, when the credits stopped rolling and the episode began and the horror of King Ramses was immediately introduced to unsuspecting children, this episode was so intensely disturbing that it completely undermines the paranormal Scooby-Doo film.
Wow.
Screen Rant said that the unexpected horror would be enough to shock someone into never forgetting the words echoed by the ancient king. I personally did not remember that this episode was on that tape. But I feel like I had that tape.
I don't know that I ever saw that tape, so I don't know.
It's kind of the thing that if you didn't know it, you just kind of left it running. You didn't rewind it immediately after the credits. You saw this episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Wow.
Which is a really smart marketing strategy, but it's also a little bit scary.
So Courage and Scooby have always been sort of tethered.
Linked.
Yeah.
Yeah, since 2000 at least.
That's interesting. Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That is super cool. I tried to look into the first mummy movie that would have used the concept of plagues on those who took something from the mummy, right? I was thinking this would be a very common story.
I thought so too, because it
all
feels
of the
like
mummy
I've heard
movies.
it a million times.
It wasn't until 1999 with Brendan Fraser's Mummy.
Wow.
Where literally the mummy brings the 10 plagues.
That's what I think of as like, this is how it works. Yeah.
Right. So it's crazy to me that the same year or very soon after the same year in the early 2000, who knows when it came out, right? That these two same mummy concepts would use that biblical concept of
plagues.
The 10 plagues or the plagues very closely together. That's insane to me. Again, something else in the ether, the muse, dropped this down, bestowed it upon creatives of all kinds.
So we have one more duty for King Ramses, and that is...
How scary is he?
The scarometer.
The scarometer.
For me, the inclusion of CGI in this thus far rather 2D show is still creepy as all hell. And if you don't agree with me, listener, try rewatching it in a completely dark and empty house without second screening on your phone. It's going to be harder than you think.
Is that what it's called? Second screening?
Yeah, when you're watching something and then you have your second screen in your face instead of this first screen. Second screen.
No wonder our society is collapsing.
I am just going to go ahead and say this, though. The actual episode itself did not chill me to the bone the way it did when I was a kid.
Same.
Of course, this doesn't mean that it wasn't scary. But something else to point out about the whole ordeal is how in this instance, Eustace's greed causes the suffering and near death of everyone around him.
Once again.
And he remains pretty stoic against that fact to the bitter end, even once after showing some brief semblance of remorse. Which, this is an unfortunate parallel to many children's experiences with abuse, particularly neglect and emotional abuse. This willful, deliberate ignorance toward how your actions affect and harm others, and continuing in that pattern, especially even once you do know better, is a special kind of dark in my book.
Yeah.
And I think that way, the parallel between Eustace and anyone willing to raid a tomb for profit is pretty appropriate. So,
Agreed, yeah.
That being said, on the scarometer, a lot of things to factor in, a lot of things to consider. But I landed on an 8.
Okay.
Because locusts are also scary AF.
Pretty scary. I think I'd give it a 6.
A 6, okay.
It's not a super scary episode. There's a lot of like humor thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was intentional on the part of the creatives here, because they needed this to not be a traumatizing episode.
And
I
it
think
still was.
the visuals of Ramses, very scary.
Very scary.
Putting myself in the shoes of, say, Courage in this scenario, yeah, that's horrifying. Something approaching my house, demanding that I give it back.
And the reins are in the hands of someone who doesn't care about you.
Right.
You can't fix this. You have to just watch it happen to you.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I mean, if this happened in real life right now, I'd be very
God.
scared.
Well, if it happened to any of us right now,
it would be
if
like,
any Courage episode happened to any one of
be
us
cranking
in our
it up
lives,
to
we would
11
rate it
every
as a
time.
10, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So yeah, 6 or 7, somewhere in there.
Overall, I do think that there are some forces, like the ones between life and death, that probably shouldn't be so blatantly disrespected.
Absolutely not.
And I think that's the lesson we can take from King Ramses' curse.
And we didn't even get into that motif of taking something that belongs to something else and it showing up to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
Like the story of the big toe from Alvin Schwartz.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a classic old world motif that's being repurposed in the modern, era. And something undead showing up to take back what you took from it. Maybe it is an 8. You know what? Maybe it's a 7 or an 8.
Are you changing your
now
mind?
that I'm
Are you
thinking
gonna
about
agree
it,
with me?
it's dark outside, okay? The wind is still howling, blowing through the
wind
trees.
is howling, yes.
The pine trees around my house are just going.
Listener, let us know what your scarometer ranking is for Ramses. I'm particularly interested and invested in hearing what you have to say about this one. So let's get the shoe on the other foot now, shall we?
Gross.
Episode 7B, The Clutching Foot, was directed by John Dilworth and written by our friend, I will absolutely never get tired of saying that, David Stephen Cohen.
Our friend, our family.
Our family. To me, this episode is equal parts disgusting and retro, hearkening an era of 30s mobster movies and, unfortunately, the agony of the feet, as TV Trope calls it.
My God. So, of all the Courage episodes, Ramses is a big one. You mentioned the creepy barber guy. You mentioned, the demon and the alien ducks, the alien fowl. Mm-hmm. There are so many things that people go, oh yeah, that show. Yeah, I remember all these things. I would always talk about too, in addition to all that, was, do you remember the big foot?
Oh my
God. The big
God.
talking foot? And people just go, they do exactly that. They cringe and they go, oh my God, that was so
And you probably
gross.
enjoyed it. Yeah, you're like, yeah, that one.
Oh, I love it. I love this episode. We were just saying, for this, sake of time, Caitlin should have done Shirley the Medium and I should have done the Clutching Foot.
We would have all had a better time, I think, with that.
I think we would have really enjoyed ourselves much more because I like this episode.
But we're both doing each of them. You know what I mean? The research is one thing, but obviously it's way more fun when we come together and share our findings.
This one's so gross, but I love it so much.
I do have to think that one of the main objectives of this episode was to lean into the gross out factor
of the 90s.
Which was inspired
early
of
2000s.
the 90s and early 2000s. Shows like Ren and Stimpy, Rocco, Beavis and Butthead that permeated late 90s and early 2000s animation culture.
For sure.
You can 100% feel that influence here. And while I am not personally a fan of this type of gross out comedy, for me, if I'm going to get grossed out, I'd rather do it with actual science and biology. I do know that it sold big at the time.
I like gross out stuff if it's tasteful.
That to me sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but I do find it to be, this episode in general, the segment, to be a really interesting mix of / commentary on the types and styles of media that culture was obsessed with at certain points in history from one generation to the next, if you will, because our grandparents watched mobsters and heists.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently we watched Gross Out Central.
Cow and chicken type shit.
Oh, cow and chicken.
Cow and chicken shit.
If I had to think of one that is just, and I know that some listeners are probably going to come for me at this moment, but I could never do Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
And even on a tier I would put below Ren and Stimpy would be cow and chicken.
Like worse?
I think it's worse.
Yeah, because there's so much devil butt now.
I really hate it. And it's just too, like, to me, it's so gross that there's nothing enjoyable about it. But obviously, they made it for somebody.
So you...
and unfortunately, I think they made it for a lot of my contemporaries.
Absolutely. You weren't allowed to watch a lot of things for, I'm going to say, pretty stupid reasons. But
in a lot of cases, yeah.
The only one really that my mom did not want me to watch, she did not like it.
The point where Pam drew the line.
The line that Pam Baxter Mott drew, was cow and chicken. She would hear it and she would come in there and tell me to change the channel. She did not like it.
My parents definitely stopped me from watching even Courage, my parents weren't fans of. We've talked about that. But I would never turn on any of those to the point where my parents would have had to tell me to turn it off.
Yeah.
And as you're saying this, I am aware that a lot of watchers of the time and listeners today would argue with me and say that they enjoy this episode.
I love it.
And again, I'm probably reading too much into it, knowing my own kinship with David.
It's gross, but I love it.
I feel like David was having fun fitting in as many retro tropes as he possibly could.
Dude, absolutely.
And I also almost feel like he was taking one for the team as head writer and finding ways to make the best out of a sort of disgusting assignment by John Dilworth, because the concept of this episode feels way more John Dilworth than David Stephen Cohen.
Just raises his hand from the back very, very slowly.
I'll do it.
John, I'll do it. I'll do it, John.
Of course, David can always correct us if we're
I just
wrong.
want to, I know we're going to talk about it, but I just want to know, when you go, all right, what personality, what trope, what stereotype is this talking foot? How do you get to gangsters?
And I think that had to have been David.
That has to be David.
I really think that was
If he goes,
David.
if I have to do this, I'm going to do it in a way that I
mobsters.
like.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's how he made the best of this, is what I think. But I did not ask that question.
The four toes, cronies.
But I will say, if there was a way to make this episode palatable for me, it was that.
Yes.
Layer.
No, I agree.
So,
I agree.
As usual, I have to commend David on his voice, because it's becoming clearer and clearer to me as we watch through the series.
Yes. His writing style is very clear.
I think the involvement of David in this, which we've been wrong about that before. Sometimes he says, I just did what was handed to me. But the title of this episode is a reference to the 1934 novel, The Clutching Hand by Arthur B. Reeve, and subsequent 1936 radio serial and film.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. You
may know more about this than I do, but when I tell you, listener and Christian, that I combed the internet for more information about this title, I combed it. And truly the only summary of the plot that I could find was on a blog called The Stop Button from 2018. And it was a post based specifically on the film adaptation, which was apparently only very loosely based on the novel.
Huh.
But in the film, a detective is on the hunt for a villain by the name of the Clutching Hand, I think because you only see him silhouetted in shadow, who is running a scheme surrounding a scientific formula that turns metal into gold.
Oh, alchemy.
And apparently the characters get into a lot of bar fights.
So much alchemy, wow.
I couldn't find really any true parallels aside from it being a movie from the 30s and therefore 30s themed.
Right.
So listener, if you read the novel, or Christian, let us know about any links that we're missing.
No, I've never read it. Also, don't know that I've seen the movie, but I'm going to talk about this too. I was doing a bunch of research into old noirs, and I've come across The Clutching Hand a couple times. I haven't seen it yet, but I really want to and wish I had for this episode.
Maybe one day you'll be able to come back and share with us what we're missing, if anything.
Next Courage episode.
I think, though,
I'll do it.
That it's probably time for a summary.
Yeah.
And I can't take credit for this one because IMDb's was too succinct and punny not to share.
Perfect.
It said, in The Clutching Foot, fungal gangsters consume Eustace's body starting with his foot and take Muriel hostage, which forces Courage to carry out their footwork.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good. That has to be part of the pun that David was thinking of too, or something in there.
Footwork, sure.
But what is it with like conscious anthropomorphized fungi, amoeba? Because the talking amoeba was from like Powerpuff Girls.
Amoeba, yeah.
Like the Gangrene Gang. Like what is it with the grossest stuff being in these kids' cartoons?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sold. That's what we were just saying. I think that even the cartoons that weren't gross by nature, I feel like pushed the boundaries of it in that era.
Yeah.
Even SpongeBob, early SpongeBob.
Oh,
my
yeah.
dad even loved early SpongeBob. But then
Season 1,
as
Season
it
2, perfect.
got into later seasons, it was all about, as TV Tropes calls it, and as we'll discuss a couple more times in this episode, the gross up close up.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't understand what the obsession with that became, but even shows that weren't that at their core started implementing.
I think it's just catering to kids.
And getting kids' attention, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
A good majority of my watch notes were variations of so gross, and oh my God, no. And honestly, personally, I just think it's unfair that I have somehow, and of course, it was just by sheer luck or me doing it to myself, probably. But I feel like I've been assigned all of these really triggering itch-related medical episodes.
Yeah.
And I just don't like it, frankly. I've been in too much agony in my own life to really be able to say I love this episode. But obviously, as we go through it, I'm interested in hearing about your interpretations of it, Christian.
I'm not sure there's much to infer, but I'll do my best.
So we open in the Bag's bedroom, and as they sleep, Eustace becomes more and more agitated, sweating, tossing, and turning. And finally he wakes with a start, shouting about wool socks.
Wool socks!
Presumably because his feet are itchy.
The worst thing about this episode to me isn't even the gross foot. It's Eustace, his complaining about it. Like his aggressive, I don't know. I don't even know what that is about that, but that was irking me so bad. How he was complaining about
the
his
way
foot.
he was reacting to it.
Yeah, I guess so. Like that was more unnerving and annoying to me than even the foot.
Obviously, he's not going to keep it to himself if he's not doing well, and he expects everybody around him to fix all of his own problems.
Well, sure, he blames he blames Courage for itching
all
his
of
foot.
Stupid dog! What are you doing itching my foot?
But luckily, Muriel has some home remedies.
Yeah, we proceed to get some family remedies from Muriel, hoping to fix him up, or either designed to make him suffer, potentially. And of all people, I guess Eustace deserves that.
I think that's part of the humor.
I didn't. Baby Kaylin didn't. Neither did adult Kaylin deserve to see what we have to see.
No,
because
Muriel
we do
means
get
well. But
several gross-up close-ups on the most painful things you could imagine applying to an already painful condition.
God.
A cactus, lobsters, some kind of acidic witch's brew that burns his skin off.
Yeah, in a pot.
Albeit temporarily.
A steaming pot.
When these remedies seem to have little to no effect, Muriel insists that he needs to go to a doctor.
It's as big as a cow. You have to go.
Right.
But he digs his heels in, pun intended, shouting,
Ain't gonna no doctor.
I feel like we often hear this sentiment all around us.
Yes.
All I need is a nap.
And I think some folks really do think that sleep is the cure-all.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to fall asleep and hope that it solves itself. And I've been in that position too, and unfortunately, it's very rare that that actually happens.
Sometimes it wakes you up in a panic. I wonder if that came from, like we said before, that John would have conversations with the woman who inspired Muriel. I wonder if there was ever like an ailment or something, and she was talking about, old remedies that her family had passed down, if he thought they were just absurd.
I think it's also a trope. We've talked about it before with the quacks and just these different
that too.
charlatan kind of passed down old wives' tales.
I wonder if that came
from a lot of places.
Like her talking about, so-and-so had a foot fungus, and we tried all these different things, and just nothing would kick it.
Maybe so.
And
Except
wouldn't you know?
One thing.
Wouldn't you know?
Yeah.
What one gross thing.
Eustace wakes from his nap feeling refreshed and decides that this did the trick.
I feel like $1 million. Yep. Nap did the trick. foot feels fine.
Until the camera zooms out and we see that his foot is now bigger than the easy chair, and the fungus has enveloped his entire lower half. Like a mermaid. To add to the gross factor, we watch it consume Eustace fully before Courage enters and screams at the top of his lungs. Apparently we haven't got enough gross stuff yet, because he then screams out each of his teeth, one by one. The fungus is now so powerful that it has become sentient. But I have some interesting information about the toes.
Okay.
The Big Toe's voice is incorrectly credited to Paul Scheffler on the fandom wiki. According to Mr. Cohen himself, the Big Toe was actually voiced by Will Ryan, who you talked about in the last episode, Christian.
Yeah.
David said that he wants to tell us about Will sometime, by the way, because he has a ton of Will Ryan stories, but he says he's an apparently amazing person.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
We were right to laud him, is what he said.
Yeah, okay.
The small toes are voiced by Arnold Stang, who was a radio voice and background actor with credits dating back to the 1940s, including the cartoon Top Cat. Not in the 40s, but among his credits, which David said that he watched in his youth. So he was thrilled to write for Arnold.
That is so cool.
And I love the, idea that David had somebody from his youth that had been in a cartoon that he watched that he now got to write a cartoon for.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
That'd be like us working on something and getting David to write something with us.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
This far-reaching career of Arnold Stang's was especially appropriate because this fungus is heavy on the 30s and 40s era mobster impressions.
One in particular.
Specifically, Will Ryan impersonating Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah, buddy. Dude,
and David confirmed this.
You know who else did that? Mel Blanc.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure a lot of cartoons imitate Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah, see.
Because he was one of the biggest actors of Hollywood's golden age, and his rise to stardom began in an acclaimed performance as the gangster Caesar Enrico Rico Bandello in Little Caesar in 1931.
Little Caesar.
And he went on to do many more gangster films in a long-term contract with Warner Brothers.
What I've seen him in is Double Indemnity and Woman in the Window.
Mm-hmm.
Both great movies.
He had a really
he's fantastic.
long career also. There was some weirdness at the end. He was accused of things he didn't do, communism and all kinds of stuff. It was all the Red Scare era.
Oh, sure. Lots of people were accused of things in that era.
Yeah. But no, he was a good
wild.
guy, I think, and clearly a prolific actor. And Will Ryan is impersonating him in this episode.
So many actors look up to him.
Exactly. Very true. I learned that Frank Sinatra was actually one of the pallbearers at his funeral.
No shit.
When he
That's
passed.
cool.
In the 70s, I think.
Wow. Well, old Frankie, old Blue Eyes, he had his own connections to organized crime.
Sure.
And the big toe, see? Yeah, see? And what I say goes, see? Got me?
Yeah, boss. Say what? Say what?
And then the smallest toe asks,
that.
see what? The big toe pulls off a Newton's cradle sort of effect with the other toes to smack him.
I love it.
Muriel enters, and for the first time in the series, she's immediately horrified by what she sees and wants to know what this creature, I guess, has done with Eustace.
Right.
Though I suppose it was probably par for the course when it comes to language around women in the early 20th century, I was admittedly taken off guard when Big Toe responds that she should...
Shut up, fat woman. You won't be needing your husband anymore, see?
And,
So
I mean,
listen
arguably
up.
she never had need for Eustace, but...
No one
I
has need
digress.
for him, for sure. But yeah, I was kind of surprised too by the strong emphasis on her weight.
Her weight and the fact that she was a
Becoming
woman, I mean...
part of her identity.
Right. But this is how men treated women then. And
Of course.
I would like to say not any longer, but that's not
Well,
true.
it's still pretty common.
Still very prevalent. That. Big Toe decides that they're going to pull a heist and knock over a bank, which is what clues Courage into the fact that they're gangsters.
Oh no, gangsters!
Or maybe Courage just feels the need to clarify for a young audience, likely less familiar with gangsters than their predecessors.
I watched today clips from Racketeer Rabbit,
Oh,
where Bugs slips into the Fritz Hotel, which I think is a reference to Fritz Lang. And he goes into the hotel and he's sleeping there for the night. There's no explanation why. And then there's this car chase shootout scene where the gangsters arrive and they're shooting all these guns and stuff at these cops, I guess. And the two gangsters are, one is Edward G. Robinson and the other is Peter Lorre.
wow.
So Mel Blanc is voicing everybody in this episode.
Dang.
But yeah, it was just super interesting. But there are all these gangster, caricatures and stereotypes, as we've discussed over and over, they were portrayed.
Reference our Oliver and Company episode, listener, if you have an interest in that culture or understanding that era of time. We dive pretty deep.
Yeah, when Courage is like, oh no, gangsters, we're like, oh, we get it.
I know what that is.
We're 7, but we understand what's happening.
Sure. We're 7 years old, but this makes sense to us.
Men in suits shooting guns? Absolutely.
Yeah. The Foot coordinates in order to stop and thus hold Muriel hostage.
Okay, dog. It's like this. You drive us to the bank, or the fat lady gets it, say?
I even looked up whether this quote was referencing something else specific, like because the fat lady, or the fat lady gets it, or the fat lady gets it, because they say it a few times, but literally all that comes up on the internet when you search that quote is this episode.
Oh, really? I'm thinking of like the fat lady sings.
You're right, Courage is now concerned about what child Kalen also would be concerned about in this situation.
I knew I should have learned how to drive a stick.
That was actually
Me too.
The first time I laughed at the episode. I was like, okay, there it is. Cut to the Foot in the back of the pickup. And Courage nervous in the cab, barely able to see over the dashboard. Also not buckled in, which I doubt would fly on kids' TV today.
Probably not.
They make their way, stalling and stuttering, to the Nowhere Bank, which is a very typical-looking bank building in the middle of the nothingness.
Okay, dog. Now you break into the bank, and you bring us all the dough, say? Yeah, say?
Or they'll put the squeeze on the fat lady. I'm beginning to think that this fungus isn't actually a very good gangster, because he's having Courage do his footwork.
Yeah, no, he has no idea
or
what he's doing.
Or maybe that makes him the best gangster of all.
But when Muriel is like screaming, and then she's like, do you think she's getting a pinch on the bottom?
I don't know.
Do you think she's getting a little
I really
butt squeeze?
Struggled to interpret that. You hear a sound.
It happened twice.
You hear a noise.
It happened twice.
So is she farting? Like,
no.
That's what I thought it was at first. And I was like, did they really go there on TV? Like,
it's either a fart.
I don't know.
Or a butt squeeze. Either way, it has to do with the butt, I think.
I
don't know what it is.
I think that's probably fair.
No
and
idea.
I don't particularly like it. Yeah. Didn't even write it down because I was like, you're stooping so low. Anybody that knows me knows that bathroom humor is just like, it's not necessary,
But it was. It is and it isn't.
It was when we were 7, I guess. So Courage dons some typical bank robber attire, his own cat burglar fare, if you will, and a big old flashlight. And he manages to make a withdrawal from the ATM and somehow climb through the money slot, which is inexplicably connected to the air conditioning vents in the building, which
I know.
Convenient plot is convenient,
I even looked up to see if ATMs are actually connected to the bank building structurally, and it's like
they're
no.
not. ATMs aren't connected to anything.
No, you can like steal an ATM. That was a trope for a while. It was like knocking over an ATM.
Right. Yeah.
Because they hold their own money.
Exactly. The money is
they
contained
hold anywhere
within the
from like
machine.
20 to 50 grand, I think.
Mm-hmm. So it's not connected to the building at all. But hey, you got to get them in there somehow, right?
It's nowhere.
It's nowhere. So anything's possible in nowhere.
Swarms of locusts can devour a house, a truck, a whole human body.
If they want to.
And ATMs are connected to banks.
I will also say that I saw a lot of things happen in air conditioning vents in the movies and media of my childhood. Didn't you, listener?
Yeah.
So many scenes of different things that I watched take place in air conditioning vents. Winning London comes to mind as my very favorite.
Of course.
It's been a long time since I got into Mary Kate and Ashley reference, okay? It's been a while.
It has been a while.
So I deserved at least, especially for what I had to go through in this episode, I deserved one Mary Kate and Ashley reference.
Allowed.
Courage rappels down, true cat burglar style, which, by the way, that's why they're called cat burglars, if you didn't know, because they are descending from above on their prey.
Why aren't they called spider burglars?
Great question. Don't know the answer. That's just the briefest of things that I read.
Silkworm burglars.
Spider burglars sounds better. I don't know.
Spider burglar.
Spider burglar. Burglar is such a difficult word to write and say, by the way.
Burglar?
Burglar.
Burglar's burgle.
I want to add another syllable. I don't need to. Maybe that's my Alabama showing.
Put that thing away.
But he rappels down to the biggest safe that I've ever seen. And the bank is using a giant pool of lava to guard this safe, which I feel like the upkeep on that would be pretty damn pricey.
Oh my God, I loved it.
to employ your own pool of lava.
Your own pool
I
of
feel like
lava.
that would cost quite a lot of money.
But it's a heist movie. I mean, episode.
You gotta have some lava. Courage pulls out a lemonade from his pockets of plenty, slurps it down, and dumps the ice from the cup into the lava, hoping to cool it down, which sends the ice cubes themselves screaming.
I don't know why I thought that would work.
More items from Hammerspace.
Hammerspace.
This was another emphasis of Hammerspace, is not just that it's an infinite realm, but that it is something from which you can pull an item at will.
Courage has got it, whatever he needs, all the time.
He has Hammerspace in his puppy pockets.
He has baseball bat space.
That's where he keeps the baseball bat.
He has lemonade space.
Lemonade, torches, flamethrowers, bombs, hazardous chemicals.
You name it.
He's got
It's
it
in Courage's
in
hammer
his
space.
hammer pocket space.
I also thought this was a pretty funny nod to like kid logic, because I feel like kids would totally suggest that as an option for cooling down the lava. Like if you presented this scenario in like a room full of second graders, somebody would raise their hand and say,
ice cubes.
Ice cubes, you know?
Give it a brain freeze.
Yeah, right? Because they watched their mom do that with like soup or something, you know? Or hot chocolate.
Cool down.
That's
pot
the
of
logic from a kid's mind. So I thought
That's
that was
true.
really funny.
That's so true.
It was a nice touch, in my opinion.
Man, working in coffee, the number of times people asked us to put ice cubes in their coffee to cool it down.
All the time.
Like, you also know that that's watering down a perfectly good beverage that's going to be cooled off in the next 30 seconds.
They probably cared more about the temperature than the speed.
You just want to wait a second?
Courage's next strategy is slightly more effective. He does a little swing, complete with a Tarzan yell. And he tries several methods to open the safe, including a stethoscope, a crowbar, and finally a few sticks of dynamite, which he places on the door and scurries up the rope to avoid. As he does so, the door cracks open. But with nowhere to go and nothing to do as the fuse runs out, very Looney Tunes style,
This is so
the dynamite
Looney Tunes.
explodes and the bank along with it.
So Bugs Bunny.
Courage is scorched in the blast and lands back in the bed of the truck, where the foot berates him for blowing up the money.
Dumb dog, you blew up the money. Quick, dog, get us out of here.
And they make their exit, but the foot has another plan.
Of course he does. There's always another plan.
I feel like this, and honestly all of the Foot's plans, kind of reference different heist movies, and I feel like we've all seen them over time.
Yeah.
And you said you had like maybe some specific examples of said films.
They're honestly kind of like how the mummy stuff from King Ramses' Curse pulled from so many mummy films and tropes and actual true history. It's just so much distilled down into a single, 11-minute episode. It's really hard to like figure that out. So David probably just absorbed a shit ton of stuff over the years.
I think so too.
And threw it all this episode. But there are specific tropes. I was really just looking to see like, what was the first heist movie? Like, where'd this come from? And I don't think it's a far cry from old noir films in general, building up the crime genre of filmmaking. But heist or caper films is a subgenre of crime thrillers, crime movies. Specifically, a caper film has to do with just viewing an entire scenario from a criminal's perspective. You might encounter police, you might encounter authority, but really you're seeing the inner workings of the criminal phenomenon.
Okay. So from the inside out, sort of, is a caper movie.
It is counterculture. It's something that most people are not familiar with.
Gotcha.
But this also became known as a heist film more predominantly because it usually involves a crime.
Ocean's 11.
Exactly. Ocean's 11. That was from the early 2000s, but it was based on an older Ocean's 11 movie. David's rolling his eyes right now going, come on, guys. Most people know this.
Hey, it's not that we don't know it. It's that we are from and speaking to the 90s.
It was based off of an older caper film called Ocean's 11. But the first heist movie was The Asphalt Jungle from 1950. And the real significant thing here is that the reason why, and not to spoil this 74-year-old movie, the reason why the robbery fails is because of the shortcomings of the robbers themselves. The interpersonal conflict, their own human elements. It's making them human. And that became a trope in heist cinema of the human element behind the robberies, is because you get to know them as human. and you begin to care about the characters. The same thing with like The Italian Job.
Yeah.
You look at these characters and you go, you end up
you almost root for them.
You begin to root for them. You want them to succeed
anti-hero.
because you see.
You see the reasons behind what they're doing.
I would say that's the main trope. It's the common shortcomings of the criminal, whereas in this episode, it's Courage's shortcomings. It's constantly put back on this dog.
Who's not trying to be a criminal.
No, he's only doing the biddings of these gangsters to save Muriel. That's it.
Right.
So that's really the main takeaway from heist cinema in general. Aside from what are the most cliche things to knock over? A bank, a train, rob a train.
Rob
and
a
then,
train. Hold
well,
up
I
a
don't
train.
think anybody really wants to knock over Florida, but there are a lot of retirees in Florida. So if you're going to go take money out of Florida, that's the place to do it.
So the heist genre definitely is on display here.
For sure.
In Nowhere.
For sure.
The Foot's next plan involves some railroad tracks where we find Courage eating a banana. And the Foot wants him to ensure that the train stops so they can literally knock it over, I think.
Literally knock it over, yes.
The fat lady gets it.
Yeah, the fat lady gets
Courage is terrified on the track, but he wills the train to stop with sheer force. And then Foot goes in for the kill, but slips on the banana peel from the snack Courage happens to have been eating and kicks the train too hard.
Because we all know that stepping on a banana peel makes you slip and fall.
Slip. We know this very well. If we didn't learn it from Looney Tunes, we certainly learned it in Mario Kart.
So many banana peels.
And because this fungus has Eustace at its core, which I did find myself forgetting, but it's true.
It is Eustace.
It blames Courage.
You dumb dog. You made me kick too hard, say?
It is Eustace. Oh my God. I never really thought about that
Yeah,
before.
he's in there.
This is Eustace's spirit.
Unfortunately, still with us. Never mind the fact that Courage just put his life on the line for this job.
Right.
According to the fandom wiki, for any of you train aficionados out there, maybe holdovers from our haunted train episode, just waiting with bated breath for our next train encounter, the engine on the train is a 480 or an American Mastodon type steam locomotive.
Wow. I like it.
Just so you know.
I'm glad to know. I don't know shit about trains.
I don't either. Back at the farmhouse, the Big Toe studies a map of the states.
I've been thinking too small, say? So now we're gonna pull a big job. A real big job. We're gonna knock over Florida, say?
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
The planning commences as the Foot lists off cities in Florida.
St. Pete.
But he gets to an exception.
But not Boca. They can keep Boca. I hate Boca.
This, I don't remember, and I don't know what it's referencing or what it's reminding me of, but this felt so familiar to me.
I'm just thinking of this episode.
I couldn't crack the code. I couldn't figure it out. Something about that, not Boca, reminded me of something. And I'm sure it's just the core humor of Courage, and that comes from David, the head writer.
Yeah.
But man, it just hit me hard in the nostalgia when he said that.
I don't know.
This does give Courage the opportunity to steal away for a session with the computer.
A fungus? Did you think about regular bathing?
Courage frantically agrees to Computer's request, though.
Well, if you want a cure, you're going to have to bring me a sample.
Woof. This is the moment that was gross to me. I always cringe at the fishing pole.
Biopsies have been my life for 6 months.
Getting the wart off the foot.
Nasty. It's not even a wart. It's just a piece of the fungus.
I don't know what it is.
We cut to Courage on the stairs. We're getting ahead of ourselves because it's just that gross. With a fishing pole. And he manages to bring a biopsy back to the computer and sticks it right into the CD drive. The CD-ROM drive. Which, by the way, they're basically obsolete now.
Of course.
Already. CD-ROM drives are.
Of course they are.
Ridiculous to me because my entire childhood pretty much revolved around the CD-ROM drive.
No one uses CDs anymore, didn't you know that?
Not really. We have them. We don't use them very frequently. And it honestly kind of makes me sad because I'm a burn a CD kind of person, you know?
Yes, you are.
That might be one of the most horrifying reminders from this whole episode for me, is that the age of the CD-ROM is officially over.
Your favorite tech is obsolete.
Computer comically spits out the sample.
Yeah, it's nasty.
Like literally as if it's his mouth. And tells Courage that the remedy for this particular fungi is, drumroll please, dog saliva.
Yeah.
Dog spit.
Dog spit,
actually.
specifically.
Work up a good drool, baby.
I love that.
And I had to rewind that moment to make sure that I heard what I thought I heard.
That's what
Yeah, I know.
she said.
You should have just committed once you started.
That's what
But that
she
was,
said.
I was like, what was that? Computer? Excuse me? Computer.
You rascal, you.
Foot continues his scheming, excited for the brass ring, the pot of gold, the big bazooly, the Burt Reynolds Dinner Theater.
Oh,
He's
so
still
good.
scheming about Florida, obviously.
I just know this is going to leave a bad taste in my mouth.
But to thwart his plans and top out our gross out factor for this episode,
Yuck.
in order to save his abusive caregiver, Courage must now lick his fungus-encrusted foot.
The things he does for love.
This lasts entirely too long for my taste, pun intended. But eventually, the foot descends into mad laughter because it tickles. And Eustace emerges, dizzy and dazed.
It's nuts.
At least Courage is rewarded for his brave and criminally disgusting behavior.
Oh, the abuse.
Muriel hugs and thanks him profusely, which we don't see happen very often.
Right.
He never really gets the praise and recognition that he deserves for all that he helps them do.
Usually she's just wondering where Eustace is.
Right, exactly. And then once she found him, it's just kind of smoothed over. She never really says, thank you, Courage.
Never fully
So that was a little bit
acknowledged.
different as well.
Yeah.
The Courage proceeds to brush, mouthwash, and floss. But the tag to this episode, the last little moment, is arguably even more gross than the episode itself. Because the personality of the big toe then personifies Courage's tongue, indicating that he has now contracted this fungus.
Yeah, big heist, say. Okay, listen up. Here's the plan, say. Okay, Dawn, it's like this. Oh, the fat lady gets it, say.
This is called the here we go again trope on TV tropes, because we're right back where we started.
Yeah.
We just had to lick it, didn't we?
How many licks does it take?
How many licks does it take to get to the center of a fungus-encrusted foot? And of course, because we just had to lick it, I just had to look it up, which I didn't want to do.
Is that part of the Bop It? Is that like part of the new Bop It era?
Lick it?
Bop it. Flick it.
No.
Lick it.
Not in this post-pandemic
it.
world. Not even post-pandemic.
Lick
just
it.
pandemic world we live in. I
Bop
hope
it.
not. Please no. Please God. Someone save us.
Twist it.
I'm not excited about the information that I now have to share with you, listener, but it must be shared.
I looked this up too.
And I will disclaim here, first and foremost, that it is absolutely not a good idea to try this at home.
Don't try this at home,
It's
kids.
not a good idea to let a dog lick any kind of wound because
No.
it can cause bacterial infections in humans, not to mention make the dog sick too. And I will not stand for any mistreatment of your furry friends on our watch.
Of course not.
Don't do it.
Do you remember how prevalent it was when we were kids to think that dogs licking your wound was like beneficial to you?
I sort of do. I have vague memories of that.
I heard so many people say the words, dog saliva is cleaner than human saliva.
Yeah, dog's mouth is cleaner than yours. I've definitely heard that. According to cleartoesclinic.com and also peoplespharmacy.com, dog saliva has been a long-standing anecdotal cure, in my finger quotes, for athlete's foot, which is a common fungal infection.
Oh, for specifically with the foot thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The website says dog saliva has antimicrobial properties. In fact, it's believed that mother dogs lick their puppies to protect them from bacteria and other harmful microbes.
Yeah.
The same property is present in human saliva, and human saliva is also thought to contain histatins,
Right.
compounds that naturally fight fungus and bacteria.
Yes.
Researchers from the London School of Medicine and Dentistry also say that the acts of dogs licking their own wounds may be beneficial in some instances, as it can promote wound healing.
Yeah.
Histatins are believed to be present in dog saliva also, which prompts skin cells to close over a wound more quickly, which means rapid wound repair and recovery.
Yep.
Several studies have also found that a compound called nerve growth factor in saliva can speed up wound healing compared to wounds that have not been applied with saliva. Shudder to think how they figured that out. However, doctors caution against having your dog lick your feet if you have broken skin, because obviously dog saliva is notorious for having its fair share of its own types of bacteria and germs.
Right.
And you are more likely introducing more bacteria to the situation.
Yep.
And finally, no definitive studies have been done on the efficacy of dog saliva when it comes to athlete's foot.
Sure, good.
But there are anecdotal stories all over the internet where people say, I agree, where people say, oh, my uncle swears that his dog licked his athlete's foot and it cured right up. Another issue with it is that it has to be done consistently. So it's not just like a one and done thing either. You have to daily do that for it to have any effect at all.
Put peanut butter on it.
Right? Which there are just so many things wrong with all of this.
That's so disgusting.
This discovery did make the whole thing make at least a little more sense to me and feel a lot less Dan Snyder, to go Nickelodeon with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you, either John Dilworth himself or someone he knew experienced an anecdotal cure of athlete's foot or read about it someplace.
Sure.
I did see an article from the Baltimore Sun about this phenomenon from 1998.
Whoa.
So perhaps that was the source of this whole episode concept.
Perhaps.
But who's to say?
Yeah, there's a reason that the vet puts a cone on your dog's head when it's had surgery or something.
All bacteria is not created equal. If you take one thing from this, take that.
Of course
Are
not.
there compounds in saliva that could help with wound healing? Maybe.
Sure.
Are there bacteria in saliva that could harm wound healing? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are some natural elements, like the puppies being licked by their mom. I think in those cases, to me, it is more akin to something like a vaccination, like a like a inoculation against it, rather than the bacteria or the saliva itself doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. Who knew we could say so much about dog saliva?
You know what we have instead of that? Neosporin.
Yeah, I was about to say,
antibiotics.
actual medication.
We've got actual shit you can get from your doctor and take care of yourself.
Not your dog.
Not your dog. Your dog
Don't let your doctor take care of this one.
Do not seek medical advice from your doctor.
Unless his name is Courage.
I would listen to anything Courage says. You're right.
That being said, we've arrived at our final scareometer of the day.
Shoot.
It's been a long journey, but we're here.
It has been a
and
long
while
evening.
this is meant to be a more comedic episode than scary, the
gross.
introduction of any kind of fungus or bacteria immediately takes it up a couple notches for me. Because that shit can be deadly.
Yeah.
And it's rather unpleasant to think about, as we all have been doing together for quite a lot of time today. You're not alone, listener. We don't enjoy it ourselves. I'm okay with it, though, because that's the price that I had to pay for getting to cover one of Courage's most lasting episodes.
Yeah.
King Ramses' Curse.
Absolutely.
And pay it I did.
You paid your dues.
So for my scareometer, let's see. What's your scareometer for the clutching foot, Christian?
Well, being forced to commit crimes would be
When your caregiver is being held hostage.
in like a real sense, because that shit's happened in real life too.
Don't like that.
It's pretty scary, but you know, it's such a comic episode. It's hard to like not laugh at it because it's so ridiculous and gross the whole time. See, but excessive itching. It's the worst.
It is the worst.
And it's one of those things that you kind of go, this could start and never go away. That's like a haunting thought for me. Because itching, I'd rather experience pain than itching.
I think I would too.
For sure. And I think the whole imagery of the foot, the itchy foot, consuming Eustace's entire existence, isn't that far off from like how an itchy part of your body can consume your whole life.
It consumes every thought, every moment.
Because I can ignore pain.
It's just too close to home right now, guys. I'm still dealing with my histamine problems, and I'm still experiencing itching on a daily basis. So,
yes,
believe me when I say you don't want to experience itching on a daily basis.
And I know that people have chronic pain, and I'm not trying to take away from that. But if
I have that too.
If I'm in pain, I can either ignore it or distract myself or whatever. Itching, I can never stop thinking about. So it's not scary, but it's haunting. I got to give it a 5.
Okay.
It's more gross than scary. But
I put it at a 4 because of the gross out stuff. I don't find it scary, but it is off-putting. It makes me want to look away. You know, it has that element. So
it's just like if a mummy shows up and says, give me back the thing that you took, I'm going to give it back.
Sure, right away.
But if something is itching and no remedy is working, that's a real life scare. That scares me to death. I hate
I'm living
to
your
itch.
nightmare. I'm living your nightmare.
You actually are. I've always said that, like, whatever government torture practices they have, forget the torture, forget the pain. Go itchy.
Consuming.
You make me itch, I'll tell you anything you want. Just make it stop. Literally, anything.
Your kryptonite has just been revealed to all of the Darklings.
I'm not even ashamed. And there's no shame in being itchy.
No, not shame, just misery.
There is shame in making your dog lick you.
Yeah, don't do that. Please don't do that.
For personal reasons.
My God. So, here we are at the end of another wild ride. I was going to say lovely, but I can't end that on the note that we've just ended on. There's nothing lovely about it. Not this time. But we made it, and I'm really glad that you're here with us, listener.
Wow.
Making it through all of this pretty darkness with us. We also have a new patron to thank.
Oh, heck yeah.
Thank you, Ashley B., for being a patron. We appreciate you and all of our awesome patrons on Patreon. If you do want to support us, it takes a lot of time and effort to research and write and record these episodes for you.
More than you could ever even fathom, guys.
So if you are interested in supporting our Patreon and supporting our content, there is some bonus content available for you there in that case, and you can go to
patreon.com/TPD podcast.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashley B., for being a patron.
Thank you.
And to everybody else.
You can also follow us on our social media. We are That's Pretty Dark Podcast on Instagram, That's Pretty Dark on TikTok. And you can email us if you have commentary, if you want to tell us how absolutely grossed out you were from this episode, if you want to yell at me and tell me that it's a classic and I should appreciate it more. You can do all of those things, any one of them, or even, give us your own scareometer scores by emailing us at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right, you can. We'd love to hear from you.
We would.
You guys make it worth it.
I really can't believe that we've reached this, it feels like pinnacle of courage to talk about Ramses.
I know.
It comes up so often, and I'm excited to hear what you guys think, and it was really fun for me getting into the Egyptology of it all, and I hope that I aggregated some fun Egyptology for your listening pleasure.
Aggregate.
Aggregate.
Agriculture.
Locusts.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job, and I think that we're going to have a chance to talk about so many more facets of Egypt history when we cover other things eventually.
There's never a shortage of opportunities to talk about
because there's no shortage of freaking Egypt history. It's insane how much there is. Like, people just think they know what ancient Egypt was like. They're just guesses. We actually have no idea.
And I've always loved that. I've always, all the museum exhibits that I've been able to see about Egypt, and
every time they uncover a new artifact, it changes what they thought they knew. Like, it adds, it's a giant,
things change and shift
giant puzzle.
The time, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool, and I love how much of it factors in, because we're also not only freaking Halloween Tree, The Mummy, 1999, but also 2 or 3 Goosebumps episodes feature mummies with specific old film tropes from horror.
Yeah.
That we're gonna be able to delve into.
Yeah, we've also already talked about archaeology a little bit on Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
So
yeah, man,
this kind of stuff comes up a lot. It really permeated the 90s, early 2000s kids media space.
I love it.
And I'm grateful for it.
We're just building our own pretty dark encyclopedia. Well, guys, it won't be courage next time. It'll be something new and special and exciting that you're probably been looking forward to for a while.
Yeah.
So stick around.
Thank you again for listening. Yeah, stick with us. We're going to have hopefully some listener request episodes and some more awesome stuff coming your way throughout the spring and summer. So hang out here with us.
Well, guys, until next time.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Don't let the reanimated
locusts,
mummy and the locusts and the waters
and the fungus
and the fire and the music and the pestilence. Just don't let it bother you. You know what? Don't think about it while you're trying to sleep. Just don't think about it.
It's like you tell somebody not to think about a white elephant. Obviously, they're going to think about a white elephant.
Don't think about all your old childhood nightmares.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all. Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.